Welcome to Death by a Thousand Cuts, a podcast about everything we are having to deal with in American society today. This week's topic, menopause, an unforeseen state of suffering. What I didn't know about menopause could have killed me. Risks of heart disease, strokes, osteoporosis, colon cancer, and dementia are said to increase when women undergo this change. Yet I recently discovered that we are all menopausally illiterate, and it's 2024. How is this possible? This isn't some new phenomenon like the pandemic, for example. Yet it will affect all women at some point in their lives to varying degrees. So I've decided to tell my personal story in an effort to share with other women what I have learned while stumbling through the medical system for nearly 20 years, trying to deal with my menopausal symptoms. Disclaimer: I am not a medical professional, and my story is just that, my story. No two women are alike, so no two menopausal experiences are alike either. Yet, there are similar symptoms that you need to be aware of. Finally, I'm not giving advice, nor making recommendations. This story is anecdotal, based on my personal account and my own research. Let me give you a rundown of all my symptoms up front so that you can see how they were all related over time. It all started with hot flashes at night when I was only 39 years old. Fresh from a divorce and a cross-country move from Alaska to the Midwest. My sleep began to be disrupted. Then the severe brain fog hit, along with unexpected bouts of rage. Next, extreme itching and dry skin, accompanied with excruciating joint pain and a frozen shoulder. Bladder frequency issues began, along with kidney infections, and eyes that were so dry that I was having stabbing pains when I moved them. Extreme fatigue and anxiety were secondary symptoms as a result of the primary symptoms. Now imagine having these symptoms all at once, which is eventually what happened. You go to bed early, you try to catch up on sleep, but then the hot flashes happen over and over again during the night that wake you up. Then your bladder wakes you up another 3 or 4 times a night, and your frozen shoulder is so incredibly painful that you have to sleep in one position or be hit with the stabbing pain again. So you have to keep finding that one position over and over throughout the night. Then you're itchy, but you can't move your arm to scratch. Anger rises, no sleep happens, you're exhausted and foggy the next day at work. Then your anxiety rises to critical levels, increasing your cortisol levels and your abdominal fat as a result. And on top of all of this, you now have to function in society and in the corporate world. If you're a single woman who is her own safety net, like me, you can see how critical it is for me to be able to function normally at a minimum. But I found myself unable to remember words or concepts that I had known before. People noticed. I was suddenly dismissed as a dullard. Even other women would sneer and roll their eyes as I fumbled around for the right words. I was embarrassed and humiliated, and had no idea what was going on. My doctors kept denying my early onset of menopause because they said I was too young. I was given antidepressants, sleeping pills, advised to lower my stress levels, increase exercise, and modify my diet. The pharmaceuticals were not that helpful to me, although the other suggestions were generally good advice for anyone, but only to a point. This was a physiological issue that needed to be addressed at the root, not merely treating symptoms with the shotgun method. But one day I stumbled across Suzanne Somers' book on bioidentical hormones and began to put the pieces together. And for the record, let me make this point right now. I know that she died of breast cancer, which is associated with HRT, hormone replacement therapy. This association was first established through a 20-year-old WHI study that was quite flawed. But I have a theory. Perhaps the reason for her cancer was that she may have been taking HRT orally, which increases your risk, versus transdermally through the patch, which I will discuss later on. Or perhaps another reason that she may have developed this type of cancer could have been her family history. This is all speculation on my part, but I wanted to put it out there for your consideration. So back to Suzanne's book. In an effort to obtain the best medical treatment I could, I traveled halfway across the country to the clinic that she mentioned. I returned with a prescription along with a little spark of hope, and I began my oral HRT. But after a year of tweaking the formula, I wasn't getting the results that I had hoped for, so I quit taking them, which was wise on my part, as I would discover later, that oral HRT had a higher risk of stroke, blood clots, and cancer than transdermal, which wasn't offered to me at the time, nor was I aware of it either. So the steady decline in my health continued, and I was trying to live with my condition through a series of coping mechanisms such as meditation, yoga, and red wine. The brain fog seemed to diminish over time, although I still have to write everything down and use Google a lot to refresh my memory. But I think the worst of it was how my poor daughter suffered as a result of the unpredictable bouts of anger. She was only 11 when my symptoms began, and then in a few short months she would begin puberty. 2 angry and hormonal females under the same roof was explosive. I wish to God that I had known earlier and could have spared her that experience. So this is why I'm telling every woman I know about what happened to me in menopause. It's an effort to prevent others from suffering like we did. About 2 years ago, the joint pain became so severe that I was walking around the house like a frail 90-year-old woman. Even my 76-year-old mother gasped in horror when she saw me struggling down the stairs. The words rheumatoid arthritis were thrown around in my direction by those who asked about my symptoms. And I knew that I had to do something. But what? I began experimenting with my diet. Vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, keto, paleo, carnivore, and even fasting, all with varying degrees of success. I even juiced for a week straight and took in no solid foods. That experiment really lit my brain up again, but it wasn't a long-term solution. Carnivore helped my joints significantly, but I ended up with several kidney infections back to back, no pun intended, which may or may not have been caused by my diet. My urologist said that the proteins in the meat were not causing my infections, but others who have tried the carnivore diet have experienced kidney infections as well. However, these infections, in air quotes, may have been false positives, according to my urologist. This led to a battery of tests from x-rays and ultrasounds to a camera being inserted into my bladder to look for cancer. All came back negative. The next visit would be to my new gynecologist for my annual, and when I mentioned to her all the issues with my bladder, she didn't put the pieces together either. It wasn't until my actual pelvic exam that she noticed some internal issues and asked me if I was having hot flashes, to which I told her since 2006. At this point, she wanted me to take oral HRT, but I had done my research and I found that oral HRT is dangerous for your liver, so I requested the patch. At first she resisted, saying they weren't equivalent, but I insisted. Because my eyes were so extremely dry and painful, I went to a specialist who said my eyes were perfectly fine and gave me some good eye drops. It was at this point that I had done enough research that I'd finally put the pieces together for myself. I didn't have RA. I didn't have cancer. I didn't have dementia. I didn't have an eye disease. Every one of my symptoms could be traced back to the lack of one thing: estrogen. Yet not one of my doctors had made that connection, which I find to be both unbelievable and infuriating. How long have women been going through menopause? It's not anything new, yet no one knows anything about it. How is this possible? To me, this symbolizes that women's menopausal symptoms are considered to be insignificant, yet my life had been severely impacted by them. So I want this information out there, especially for younger women, so that they are not confused or suffer as long as I did, unnecessarily. I know there are risks to hormone treatment, but I believe the benefits outweigh the risk, in my opinion, and I plan to stay on them, well, until I die. It's only been a little less than a month since I began, but I can tell you that I'm sleeping better and that I have less urinary frequency. I'm hoping that in the next 3 or 4 months, my joints will start to respond as well. Another issue that I've been hearing about in my research is that many women's doctors refuse to give them hormone treatment after a certain age. But there are ways around this. For example, there's a website called Alloy, ALLOY, that has real medical doctors who will prescribe you the hormones that you need. Here's my second disclaimer. I have no affiliation with Alloy, and I'm not gaining in any way from this company, but I have used them as well. I plan to do an update in 6 months to let you know how it's going for me, but anything is better than what it was before. It just angers me that creative women with brilliant minds are undone by a lack of knowledge about their bodies and a lack of treatment that could significantly improve their lives. Also, I want you to be more aware and supportive during this time with the women in your life, because someday it will happen to you. And if not you, it'll happen to your mother, your wife, or your daughter, and it will affect you on some level. There's one final point that I'd like to make, and that is, I really came to the harsh realization that no one is coming to save me, and that I have to save myself. And so with you. You have to save yourself. Stay informed. Get multiple medical opinions. Talk to each other. Tell your daughters what to expect, and be supportive of other women. We have the right to optimal health. Demand it. Whether the medical experts call you a whiny woman or not, you have choices. You have options. Seek them out. Thank you for joining me today on Death by 1,000 Cuts. I'm Liz, and I hope to see you next time.